Welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. I'm JD Wilson, and I'm your host today. And today on the show, we've got two very special guests. One is the most decorated artist in Christian music history, with 5 Grammy wins, another nomination for this year, 50-plus Dove Awards during his career as a musician. Stephen Curtis Chapman is no doubt one of the founding fathers of Christian music in this country. He is also renowned as one of the best songwriters in Nashville during that time as well. And so we've got him on the show, his wife, equally impressive and accomplished, New York Times Bestselling Author Mary Beth Chapman. And we're going to talk with them about their work with the organization Show Hope. Many of you listening to this are familiar with the organization and their work, but you might not know its origins. You might not know what's going on with it now. We thought it would be fascinating to sit down with the Chapmans and talk with them about the shift from getting involved in the conversation on adoption through their own adoption, and how that led to them then getting more involved on a fundraising, donor, and then organizational level to the point where they're now one of the most influential voices in adoption granting and funding around the world. And so you are going to love the Chapmans. Side note, I'll say there's a very real connection that we have that goes back literal generations with us. So my grandfather and Stephen's dad were co-workers at a church together. You'll kind of hear some of that story, but they're also became best of friends. And my granddad, as you'll hear in the podcast, had a profound impact on their life. And so as we talk about him, there's some the context behind that. So you'll hear that story in there. But you're going to love hearing from the Chapmans this morning. Important and interesting conversation with them, as well as announcements about their upcoming conference, the Hope for the Journey Conference, formerly known as the Empowered to Connect Conference. We'll talk about that more in the podcast itself, and stay tuned afterward for more details on that. Check out the show notes for more details on that. But without any further ado, here we are with the Chapmans. We now welcome on two very special guests, Stephen Curtis and Mary Beth Chapman, and they're going to be here today. Primarily, we're going to talk about their organization, Show Hope, and the upcoming Hope for the Journey conference. But before that, we've got to hear a little bit of background on who the Chapmans are. So if you've never met the Chapmans before, if this is your first introduction to them, we'll just have them share a little bit about themselves. Tana Ottinger is also with me today. And so, Stephen, Mary Beth, if we could, why don't we start with kind of your story about maybe how you guys met and just sort of and your family, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, shall I begin? I should let ladies go first, but I have to say this first, and then I'll let you take over, because there's a particular fun connection here with JD, the host of this podcast, and in that his grandfather is the man in Paducah, Kentucky, who if anyone's heard my story, read my book, and know of Brother David, who was very instrumental in my family's journey coming to faith and walking with Jesus, it was much due to the love and pursuing of the pastor of Olivet Baptist Church, where I grew up in Paducah. And Brother David was the man who baptized me and my brother and really led my family back to the Lord, my parents, and discipled us. And it was just so cool to now major full circle to, watch your mom grow up. She was, the piano player.
Oh, yeah.
For our church. All of us, all the boys had crushes on her. She was really, really beautiful. She was, 10 years older than me or something maybe, sure. But we were all like, she's so pretty. Just such a cool thing to get to talk to you and know that, man, the full circle, part of the reason the Chapmans are sitting here talking about all these things, and on my side of the story, for sure, go all the way back to your grandfather and your grandmother and their faithfulness. So what a blessing.
And like I told y'all beforehand, that fact was not lost on him. He told me that many times, that he was responsible for your career and your faith and all that.
man.
Well,
yeah,
very,
he was
very
awesome.
true. Well, while I was growing up in Kentucky, Mary Beth was in
Yeah,
Ohio.
I was growing up in Ohio. We met at Anderson University now. It was Anderson College at the time.
Yeah.
And fun fact about us is my maiden name is Chapman. And so we actually shared a mailbox at school. They put two people, not physically in a mailbox, but our mail was in a mailbox. And that's how we met. Stephen, you can tell the story of our actual meeting and all that.
Yeah,
But
I found her. I saw her in the cafeteria. Realized that she was the Mary Beth Chapman I was sharing a mailbox with, and so I went over and introduced myself. She was quite lovely, and I thought I want to meet her and talked to her, and just was fascinated with who she was, and I kept meeting her, sort of on purpose, pursuing her. Some would call it stalking, but it was pursuing her until I finally got her to go on a date with me. I asked her to go on a date. We went to Red Lobster. I had to go, as big as you could go in
That's what
Anderson,
sealed
Indiana.
Right. I mean, that was fancy back then.
That was big time. She
That's
knew.
fancy.
I'm not dealing with small time.
That's right.
She's taking me straight to the top.
That's right. You grab her and you don't let her go
That's
at Red
right.
Lobster.
That's right. Popcorn, shrimp, and cheese biscuits. That's the recipe
I love it.
for love.
Cheese biscuits.
So apparently it was, at least the beginning, certainly on my part. I was falling in love hopelessly with this beautiful young lady and convinced her about a year later to share a mailbox with me forever, as we like to say. And that's been 36 years that we have been on this wild adventure together. And but yeah, from there, moved to Nashville. Music was, of course, the adventure that we were on. She was supporting me in that, and we came to Nashville and had our 3 babies pretty soon, within 5, 6 years.
All of this was in it. Yeah, I met Stephen when I was 19 and married him when I was 20. Had Emily when I was 21, which Tana is Shoei's age. You put that in perspective because it was just different then, right? And then just a couple years we experienced the loss of a miscarriage between Emily and Caleb, and then Caleb came along, and we honestly thought our quiver was full, and then all of a sudden, Will Franklin was here. 15 months later, here's Will Franklin, and then the rest of the story, coming full circle into the adoption of our beautiful Shoei and Stevie and Maria. So that's how we met and how we got to where we are 36 years later.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, I love it. So for people who don't know kind of y'all's draw into adoption, I'm sure a lot of people have kind of heard this story, but maybe a condensed version of, you guys were full bore music, raising the kids, everything's kind of great. And then one of your kids, if I'm not mistaken, disrupted your entire life, right? With a conversation.
Just the beautiful disruptions of life that we often say we could have missed it. We could have missed it.
Yeah.
And our Emily, who's now Emily Chapman Richards, executive director of Show Hope, at 11 years old, she and I took our first trip to a third world country with an organization, Compassion. We love those folks. We went to Haiti with them, and she and I on a mother-daughter youth, like a middle school youth trip with Compassion, and as it should have, broke our hearts for the vulnerable, period, full stop. And Emily came home with this little glimmer in her eye and did just 11-year-old little, we called her the tiny theologian. She just said, we have room at our table and there's no reason, Mom and Dad, you shouldn't consider adopting, whether that's home, here in the U.S., whether that's abroad. There's children globally who need families, and we are certainly in a position where we could do that. And Stephen often tells in concert, we told her that's just amazing. And you can do that when you grow, when you grow up and have a family of your own. But obviously, I think Stephen and I both know that God was just beginning to plant that seed. I think it had been planted there before the trip. I think she's always been tendered towards all the way back to when she was in kindergarten. we were considering changing schools, and there was a little girl she was so close with who did not have a great family life situation, and she was like, who's gonna love Maria, which became a Stephen Curtis song called "Who's Gonna Love Maria," and we ended up leaving her at that school so we could try to engage with that story a little bit. And so long and full stop is Emily. And I will forever be grateful, as will her father. It has been mountaintops and valleys, but it is definitely God used her to catapult us into our beautiful family.
I love that. Love that. How long ago? So, no, Show Hope officially kind of started in 2003. Is that right?
That's when we finally incorporated it. Shoei was adopted. She was born in 1999, brought home in early March of 2000. And so we always say that's when Show Hope was born. It was originally Shohana's Hope, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best idea to put that kind of pressure on her. We've obviously, right, Tana, we've learned so much in these years, Then it was our heart. It was like we were the Grinch. Our hearts had grown a million sizes and we were going to tell the world about it. And this little girl, was the one that started it all. So it's got to be Shohana's Hope. It's like, oh my gosh. So anyways, the beautiful part of that is internally, it became nicknamed Show Hope. And one day, literally, someone goes, that is what we do, Show Hope. And so we were able to shift the wording but completely enraptured by this little girl named Shohana Hope. And so In Our Heart started on the way home. We, just the experience of receiving Shoei as my daughter, it was really more of a rekindling of my own spiritual adoption that happened in the hallway of the hotel there. And I just came face to face with my own spiritual adoption story. And so, in trying to keep time succinct on the way home, just continued to we were wrecked, right? Wrecked for the best possible reasons. And just thinking on the way home, okay, Steve, I know that was back in the day where everyone could meet you at the gate, right? And there was the big party and the big celebration. Like we can date ourselves with, hey, that was back before the internet. You were stalking me, but there were no texting and anything like that going on. Like we were dialing. Hey,
kids are out there going, what? There was a time when there was no sun? What do you mean?
Yeah, Shoei's adoption picture came to us through dial-up, AOL dial-up, and we're watching it open from the bottom up, and I'm like, anyways. But I just had this sense that obviously Stephen had this platform, and we were going to be met by probably 200 or 300 of our closest friends at this gathering to welcome this little one home. And I said, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to do this. And I know finances are going to stand in the way. And obviously, again, that's laced with, we had no idea what all the complexities of adoption would hold, but we just knew that what we had experienced, we needed to figure out a way to let everybody experience that. And if finances were what was holding them back, then we could be maybe that step into that. And that's where that all started. And so our adoption agency, Bethany Christian Services and America World, I call them the Bryans. There's Brian Lewis and Brian DeVos. Both of those agencies really gave us a lot of advice and wisdom. And Bethany actually let us house a fund there until we could actually get Hannah's Hope Incorporated, which that's when that happened in 2003. So
awesome.
Yes, big journey.
Incredible story. It's been an adventure for sure. And just watch how, I remember us just coming home with our hearts so full with this experience, but also so broken because we had walked through Shoei's orphanage and we had this whole education that Emily had given us because remember she bought the big book on
this will surprise you, Tona.
Adoption.
It won't surprise you.
At 11 years old, she's still doing it. We just got off a call with her. At 35, she's still just as thorough and
in the backseat of our car with this huge, again, before the internet, book that she bought at Barnes & Noble, going through the pages and reading to me the country requirements. So, well, here's to adopt from China, it's this. To adopt from Ecuador, it's this. To adopt from the U.S., this is the system. And she's read everywhere we went. She would read it too.
So we had all this. It was like literally, you look back, because we didn't know at the time, but it was like God was giving us this education through our 11-year-old daughter, of all the opportunities, the need, the crisis that it was. And then suddenly you're standing in the orphanage that Shoei came from, which God kind of opened the door for us. Not many people got to visit the orphanages at that time. And so we're standing there and we're looking at bed after bed after bed with child after child. And it's kind of like suddenly all these numbers and figures and information that's in our head becomes so real because it's tangible. And there's a room and 2 and 3 rooms full of all these little lives that are representative of lives all over the world. And suddenly it's like, what are we going to do about this? We knew what we were going to do about this one, and we're going to love her and care, but we didn't expect this.
And you all have heard the stories of, you talk to people about, how, why were you drawn to China, or why were you drawn to this country? And so many times I go, I don't know how that, a lot of times it's, why didn't you adopt from the U.S.? And it's like, look, there's need globally.
Yeah.
And I've ended up answering the questions like, that's where my daughter was. Like, God, each story is so unique and so beautiful. It's how he knits that story together. But we were keenly aware, I think, in that moment, because we had the 11-year-old reading the encyclopedia to us, that Shoei represented globally.
Yeah.
It was just like, shame on us that our eyes have not been opened before now. But God has timing, right? His timing is perfect. And so we just thought, okay, we're not going to do it perfectly, but we at least feel like there's this platform where we can begin, like here, like we're going to offer this service back. So, yeah.
I think about sometimes it's almost like we want to overcomplicate just those simple steps.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been asked, why did y'all decide what you did? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there was some like beautiful naivety in what we were doing in that moment, but like the Lord's been faithful and good in the midst of just stepping in.
Tom, you're so right. I was so afraid of my own, what I felt like was my own inability and fear and maybe lack of faith. And yet God, I could just tell you comical, I could tell you sad, I could tell you all kinds of things that happened where it just was this directing of just reminding me to just trust him for the story and take the next step. And that Steve did great in that, and that he sat our kids down and said, you know what, guys, we really feel like we're supposed to take this journey towards adoption, and it's a journey, and there's probably going to be some detours along the way and some roadblocks, but we're just going to keep stepping. And then we're just going to keep going the direction that we feel like God's gently, he wasn't screaming at us. He was just like gently kind of leading the way. And then you're right. It's that beautiful kind of a naivety where you can't really put a pin in it. You just look back and go, oh, that's why, and yeah.
I think it's interesting because I would be curious if y'all don't mind speaking sort of like from that point to where y'all find yourselves now and some of the work that y'all are doing through Show Hope and, maybe some of the change along the way of how you're spending, Show Hope's time and energy and resources, some of the things that maybe, as you've alluded to several times, Mary Beth, like we have learned a little bit. I mean, that's part of the beauty of the journey, right? It's like just giving ourselves compassion to be like, we didn't know then. We don't know it all now. We're learning, and we're just going to sort of keep moving.
And think about that. If we would have known everything we know now, well, okay, we know that a lot of things would have happened, because I think God, he's gentle with us, and he has so much for our journey. He's never promised that it's all going to go well and be easy. And I remember those early days when we first started giving grants, and this beautiful woman, Terry Coley, she's been right by my side from the beginning of the giving of the grant process. I mean, we went from love is enough, and look what this family's doing, and look what they're willing to take on. And these people write, again, beautifully in their own story. God's writing their own stories, and they're doing what they feel God's calling them to do. And yet we were right there with them, and it was the way in which we gave grants was just out of this radical this is what happened, and we were so ravished by the love of adoption. And then as the years go on, you start becoming wiser, and and things are exposed to you where adoption is hard and adoption is difficult, and sometimes we aren't equipped with what God has allowed to be our journey. And so, again, Terry and Dan, in their own particular story, began to have some hard places. We were hearing from other families were some hard places. And, Terry and I are looking at each other going, hey, so love and finances aren't enough. And we're going to be really, really disobedient. And it's not going to be okay if we just stop here and just keep giving grants to people who long to bring a child home through adoption. And we want them to, but they need to be equipped and they need to know what the journey is going to look like. And they're still going to adopt. But if we can give them tools and training and begin to step into that gap, one thing I tell people a lot about the process at Show Hope with, in particular, we started with adoption aid grants, is we didn't stop there. We've evolved, and our programs team has done a great job. If we ever stop and think we're doing it right, then we're doing it wrong. Obviously, we're doing it wrong. And the way in that we look at at the matrix and what the family is really stepping into, and really just trying to offer resources so they can make wise and informed decisions, because, we want families to succeed, and we want families to be able to have these children in their homes and, be part of their family. And, but we feel like we couldn't stop. So the transition has been, yes, we're going to give adoption aid grants because finance is a big stumbling block. This initial step into, we really long to bring a child home, but we just don't have. And we've seen firsthand, we don't grant the entire amount because we love seeing communities, churches, community groups, neighborhoods, families coming around people and helping step in the gap, because then they also feel like they can step into the story. And we know that stories go in all different directions, and some are really, really hard. And but they're beautiful. They're all beautiful. They're just the tapestry of all the hard. And so from then the adoption aid grant, how can we go into the direction to then, okay, so now what? So, which is where our relationship began with you guys, with Empowered to Connect, and our relationship began with TCU and Darren and Amanda and Dr. Purvis and Dr. Cross and the TBRI. And so just beginning to just, again, how can Show Hope continue to just get better at what we do, and then bring the people in that are really doing it really well and help resource them.
Yeah. I think the thing that I have learned in this, and, from my perspective, and so much of the knowledge and the wisdom that God has given my wife and now Emily, and much of that has come through
staff,
our staff and people like Dan and Terry and you guys, Tana and Martin. Just it's watching, if we scripted these stories, number one, there shouldn't ever be orphans. It's not the way it should be. It's it's not as it should be, the fall and the results of that. And I think it's been my great struggle because, I grew up like many of us, with that message of the gospel. God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. And it's so true. And yet what you naively hear that as, man, this is cool. You trust God and everything is just going to line up and your life's going to go so much better. And so, it's just going to be easy because God's got your back and this is going to be great. That unfortunately, I was not reading the Bible as thoroughly as I should, because you can look at the stories in Scripture and go, oh, wait a minute. Well, it might get you thrown into a lion's den. It might get you thrown into a flaming furnace, or even, worse if you go all the way into the New Testament. But still, I think you weave a lot of the American, way of thinking that, man, life is, I'm entitled to a really good life. And then as a Christian follower of Jesus, of course, I'm entitled to a really good life and peace and all of this. And what we've observed and watched and seen is how God does have a plan, even in the brokenness, even when you all of a sudden naively get into this, as we did with Show Hope, and start realizing, as Mary Beth and I started saying, I think maybe we have to look at going into the witness protection program at some point, because when all these really cute babies turn into teenagers and all of a sudden all these issues and these challenges and these realities come, or even before, even, in the first months or years, and we're going, we didn't know any of this. And I love how, Tana, you said almost beautifully and naive in some ways that God even uses that. But then to realize, wait a minute, God, he's in every part of this. He has a plan. He does have, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be messy, but he really is inviting us into the whole process. And he really is going to provide wisdom and grace, for us as we seek that out, and to watch how he has provided that and brought that through the work of, Karen Purvis and the amazing work of the TBRI and ATC and all of these people coming together as the body of Christ and kind of the family and the body working together. There's the arm and I'm the hangnail on the left pinky and, and that's my role. But God puts all these amazing body parts together to say, this is what my body looks like right now, this side of the fall, this side of heaven, while there is all this brokenness, but God is showing up even in that.
Well, I'll say my introduction to Show Hope was through the conferences in years past, and us sitting down as young parents just drowning and going, there's got to be some kind of answers here, because what I was doing was not working, and I need help. And I'll say that's probably the story of a lot of people who are listening to the podcast today, is showing up at a Show Hope conference, getting resources that were made available by Show Hope, whether through TBRI and TCU or through ETC or whatever. And so one, I'll just say for a whole lot of weary parents, thank you guys for that. And second, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the conference this year coming up. So Show Hope's putting on the Hope for the Journey conference, which is happening really just around the corner here. We're going to have all that information in our show notes here. Will you guys talk for a minute about that conference and kind of the hopes behind it? And it'll look a little bit different this year because of the pandemic. But will y'all talk about that for a few minutes before we get out of here today?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're really, really excited. We were all, I think, supposed to be together last week, and the Snowvid-19 stopped us from getting to do some of the recording. So, in years past, Empowered to Connect, which we've rebranded to Hope for the Journey Conference, is going to be one day instead of two, and trying to really hone it to a one-day conference where it might be a little more easier for families and caregivers to kind of absorb that, but it's going to be also available for 2 months after that, so they can do the modules in between, and it'll be
Awesome.
more of a kind of a module setup. I think there's 5 modules, and Emily obviously can speak way more eloquently about it, but it's all the TBRI. The introduction to TBRI is the beginning module all the way down to the end. What we've added this year is we really feel, because so many churches obviously participate, offering this module of TBRI and the gospel. And our longtime pastor, he's trying to
turn my messages are going.
He's trying to stop his
It's all good.
But we're old people and don't know how to turn off notifications on a computer. It is just, the struggle is real, people.
It is.
But
but we have internet.
That's right. But we have our pastor, since the time Emily was, I guess 4 is when we started going to Christ Community. We have followed Scotty Smith into the nths of the world. He's been a pastor. He has married, and he buried our sweet Maria. He has walked beside us, and he is certainly, he is going to give Emily's calling it an homily of hope, kind of the hope and the gospel. Obviously, we know that Dr. Purvis, I love this. Dr. Purvis was a believer, and yet all of her education and training being all scientific, but yet her faith was the bedrock. And so, how as Christians do we look at that? Yet we know that there's so many, many practical scientific reasons as to how TBRI affects, the training and the parents and the children. So anyways, we wanted to kind of sort that out so that people, if they watch it later, can pick and choose what they, want to watch, do it as a Bible study, do it as a group, ingest the information as they have time. And so we're really excited about that. And so, Darren and Amanda are coming from the Institute to do some teaching. Mark and Tana are going to be with us. Emily, lots of other folks. I don't have the list in front of me. Tana, you probably know a little bit about the how each module is broken down with which speakers are going to be in those in particular modules. But we're real excited to just be there to champion it, cheerlead it, and be there.
Well, we'll throw the links to register in the show notes. And again, coming up on Friday, April 9th is the day that the show will premiere, or the conference will premiere. It'll be available for 2 months afterward. You should definitely take advantage of getting to be a part of that as it comes up. Okay, last question, and this is purely a selfish question on my part. So, Steve, from a musical perspective, obviously, I mean, you've had incredible longevity as an artist, but I know that you've got several things kind of in the secret vault that you're working on now. Do you want to share anything that you're working on artistically now that we'll see in the coming months?
Well,
I got a new song for Valentine's Day.
yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
There is that.
And he played it for me on Valentine's
Yeah.
Day.
It was her Valentine's gift was a new song.
I Will Be Here 2.0.
Oh yeah. I have been writing. I've been, for a little while now. So much has changed in music and the music world, and my role in it, and just how people consume music. Obviously, COVID has completely brought my vocation in many ways to a screeching halt. People can't go to concerts and all of that. So, hoping and praying that will come back soon. We need that on several levels. Our sons, who have a band as well, need that.
Yeah, Colony
Our
House.
grandchildren need it.
Colony House.
Yeah. And our daughter-in-law, Jillian, who's an amazing singer-songwriter. So, but I have been in the process of writing some new music and starting to make plans to record that sometime, probably this year, later in the year, but don't have any, release time yet. I'm sort of just in the beginning stages of writing and accumulating. I've been writing, off and on through the last really full album would have been like Glorious Unfolding that came out.
Yeah.
Hard to even know now how many 6-7 years ago, which is crazy. It seems time, to do that. And I'm very excited about it, a little nervous because do I remember how to do this? I think I do. It's been a while, but it is exciting. And I feel like there are some new things to say that I can only say, and, for us and our journey and show hope and related to all of these things, there are things at this point in our journey in my life that I can say that I couldn't have even said, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that seems important for me to write those songs, even as I hope to continue to be able to sing the songs and encourage people in the ways that I have for all these years. We've got a Empty Nest coming in the fall, which is going to be a new season for us. 35 years of a full nest. Suddenly it's going to be empty.
It's going
to be crazy.
The struggle is real.
Yeah. Struggle on the struggle bus here a little bit with that, but it's going to be a season that I think for us to explore together. We've talked about writing some things together and communicating more, things even that the two of us can together in ways that we haven't really been able to for all these years because, it's been raising youngins and all of that. So
right.
I think there are going to be some good things ahead that we're grateful for and excited about.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Okay, so Hope for the Journey Conference coming up Friday, April 9th, and we'll get to hear from a lot of different people. We'll put that all in the notes. People can catch the work of Show Hope at showhope.org. Steve and Mary Beth, where can people find you guys individually on social media?
I'm marybethchapman.com. He's stephencurtischapman.com. And Show Hope, and of course showhope.org, like we said. And then I would be remiss if I didn't personally thank Mark and Tana and the great work you guys are doing with Empower to Connect and with Memphis Family Connection Center. You guys have led the way. We've so enjoyed over the years. I've not been as present because I've been raising kiddos and coming in as the board chair, and I'm not there day to day at Show Hope as Emily is. But obviously, Mark and Tana, we just champion you and bless you, what you guys are doing, making a difference where you are, and and nationally. It's just, we've loved partnering with you. You guys do it so well. And JD, thank you
Yes.
for your part in meeting
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes, you guys are just, we have loved pulling our resources together and helping you however we can, and vice versa. You have been just such a wealth of information and doing it well and with excellence. So just wanted to publicly say we love you. Thank you for being so sweet to Emily. She is just raved about all of you guys.
Thank you so much. I appreciate those kind words. I will say as we're closing, I've just, maybe from the very beginning, even before we hit record, have just been sitting in this sense of like, the glorious unfolding. I mean, Stephen, you just said it. It struck personally to me. 2 of our younger kids it came from centers in China that Show Hope supported. And so there's deep personal connections to the work of Show Hope. And we actually have a painting in the room of those 2 kids that says glorious unfolding. So from I wrote the word impact when we first started recording, thinking about just the line of even JD's grandfather and the story of the Chapman family and to the story of the Ottinger family, and just that beautiful weaving together. The things that we don't know, that we get to sort of sit in the mystery of just being faithful in the small ways that we can be faithful wherever we feel compelled and pulled. And so I'm just sitting in that today. I feel really blessed to have just the opportunity to sit back and be amazed and wonder together about the glorious unfolding of just living life together and watching the Lord weave pieces in and out. It's beautiful.
And really trusting, Tana, that we are going to see it with our own eyes. We'll see it full and complete in heaven. But I do think holding on to that, the glorious unfolding of being able to see some of it here too, right? As we journey on and as we journey toward heaven, it's not going to just be when we get to heaven, which that will be awesome because I've got tangible treasure there. I'm waiting to run towards that little booger, Maria. But but even here, seeing how God takes all the hard and all the good and all the time continuum of story, just going, gosh. Steve was talking to Brother McMichael's grandson, and and just how God uses stories to be, and like you said, impact. It's just impact where you are, and then what you can do to just offer your hands this way and go, and then you look back and go, wow, that was God all along. It wasn't us. It was just us kind of going, okay, here's who we are on the continuum.
We are not a people without hope.
Yes.
We are not a people without hope.
I keep smudging my glass, trying to see more clear.
Yeah, really.
That's great.
We'll see it clearly one day.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you guys for giving us
thank you so much for your
precious time.
Yeah.
You're more than
Appreciate y'all.
Well,
appreciate
you
it.
guys are so welcome.
Yeah.
Well, we love
Hope
you
your
guys
wife
too.
I hope your wife is doing better. And
Yes.
please tell your husband, Tana, we said hello.
Yeah. Sounds great.
I
Sounds
will.
great. Hey,
y'all.
good on you, Mary Beth, for keeping your maiden name in your website.
Right.
I said, I'm like, he took my name, it's 2021.
Which Chapman am I? I don't know.
Although honestly, that's why we say our kids are like this uber oddly creative bunch, because we both claim way, way, way down in our DNA. We both claim Johnny Appleseed. I'm like, he's my uncle in our ancestry. He goes, no, he's my uncle. He was John Chapman. So I think anybody with the last name,
You can't even decide who's.
Anyways,
and then being
for another day.
Yeah, that's another day.
That's another episode.
Hearing somebody with the same last name,
Oh, there you go. See, he did it.
Yeah,
there he
I
did.
did
There he
that.
did it. He's from
Love it.
Kentucky. It's not that
seemed
odd.
only right.
I love it.
Oh,
Goodness.
That's
Thank
a whole
y'all.
other episode.
well, just really interesting, encouraging stuff from the Chapmans, and just really grateful for Stephen Curtis and for Mary Beth coming on today. And I will say 2 things that I was really encouraged by. One, just Mary Beth's story of just as we've learned different ways of doing things, we learned better ways of doing things. We've just shifted how we're doing them. We don't lock ourselves up in shame and get hung up on it. We adjust and begin doing things in the better way that we've seen, and that's it. And that's just such an encouraging reminder. Great great reminder for me. I'll also say the other thing that I thought was hilarious was them having the same Mary Beth's maiden name being Chapman. So them having the same name, the same last name, you just don't hear about that often. That's probably only interesting to me, and so I'll stop there. But you can find more information on the Hope for the Journey conference on Show Hope's website or any other social media handles, which you can find linked in the show notes below. Again, April 9th. Make time to go be a part of that. I'll say some future guests of ours, wink, wink, are going to be speaking there at the conference. And so we'll have a little bit something special to release on the same day of the conference in terms of some deeper dive conversations with some of the conference guests. And you won't want to miss that. So April 9th, Hope for the Journey Conference, showhope.org to sign up. Don't miss out on that. And I will say, stay tuned. We've got some incredible people coming down the line. So we will be with you again next week on the Empowered to Connect podcast. For Kyle Wright, who edits and engineers all of our audio, and for Tad Jewett, the maker of the music behind the ETC podcast. This is JD Wilson, and we will see you next week on the ETC podcast.